Clive Essame is still with us. We've just been talking about his writing workshops, but now we're going to move on to something a little more fantastical, I suppose, and a little play you've written called Impisi. Tell us what Impisi is.
Impisi is the Zulu word for hyena, and there's a reason why it's called Impisi, hyena. But to go back to where this original idea came from is I was out in South Africa a few years ago, and I went to see a play performed by two actors who I didn't sort of know, and I was so, well, blown away is a sort of overused expression, but they were just amazing. Physical actors, physical theatres, they became African wild animals. No masks, no costumes. And I came out of the play and I said, I've got to work with these guys. So I did. And the following year, one of the actors, a guy called Ellis Pearson, and I wrote this play. And it's a play basically about how people see people who are different through physical disability in this particular context. And there are no humans in it. It's all done through the characters of African wild animals. We research the behaviour of some of them. And the reason why it's called Impisi, hyena, is that we see hyenas as ugly, malformed, dirty, smelly scavengers. Then they're not. They're one of the most effective killers in Africa. They are very intelligent, and so I liked that sort of, the way we look at them isn't the way they are. So I used that as the title, and Impisi the hyena is one of the two main characters in the play. Right.
The play deals a lot with the theme of disability and people's perceptions of disability, and just to give our audience a little bit of context, you yourself are physically disabled. Would it be right in saying that a lot of the impetus for writing the play comes from your personal experiences and how you've been perceived?
Yes, I think so, and how I perceive myself and how other people perceive, people with disabilities.
And is it something you feel very strongly about, that people's perception of, people with any kind of disability, physical or otherwise, is often so far removed from the truth? And is there any kind of motivation behind the writing of this play in that sense?
It can be. I mean, obviously you can't paint everybody with the same brush.
Of course.
I think things have improved an enormous amount during my lifetime. But really this play is, it's to get people, children, it's mainly for children, but certainly not exclusively, because it can be looked on at lots of different levels, to actually stop and think, and hang on a minute, am I prejudging somebody, and why am I prejudging? But it also looks at how somebody who acquires a disability looks on themselves, and how that can have an enormous impact on their lives, and their success, if you can call it that, in life, is people's own perceptions.
I mean, it strikes me, with all that we're talking about, that this is a story that could have been told in a very kind of kitchen sink, social realist way. So why tell this story with animals?
Because it's much more visually exciting. It's, in some ways, you can get away with more because it's not humans. The story is basically the story of a lion, a young male lion, who is just about to take over the pride when he gets caught in a snare. And he injures his leg, one of his legs, but he does manage to get out of the snare. But from then on, he is permanently, he has a permanent limp. He's permanently disabled, and his interactions with some of the other animals could be quite painful if it's done through humans. But by bringing in other animals who have characteristics that we almost impose on them, it becomes, there's more humour there. It's not so painful. It's not, so we can get it. I think it puts the story over in a more accessible way.
Okay, because there is a kind of tradition, I suppose, for anthropomorphic storytelling, of using animals to convey very human stories. I mean, the classic examples that come to mind, things like Wind in the Willows. Recently in cinemas we've had Life of Pi, which does it in a slightly different way, sort of using the tiger as a substitute for one of the humans in the shipwreck. I mean, what do you think is the innate appeal? Is it just the idea that you can, as you say, get away with more if you don't tell a human story with humans, or is there some other appeal to this which would work for this particular material?
I think there's more of an appeal. I think it does make it. I think it might make it more entertaining, you know, because I think. And you can laugh at things that maybe you couldn't laugh at if they were portrayed by humans. And there's also the R factor, oh, isn't it cute, sort of thing. And there's that. And I think perhaps it gives us the freedom to impose our sort of personalities on animals. We can imagine them with characteristics that maybe you couldn't with a human. Yeah, I think it just makes it. I think it opens the imagination a bit more.
Okay. Now the play has also been turned into a book, which you're in the process of self-publishing.
Yeah,
right?
that's.
What are your intentions with the play? Because off air we were talking about how you were wanting to get students involved. I mean, what would be sort of exceeding all expectations? What would be the best result that could come from this piece of work, do you think?
It would be great to be able to work with a few groups of people. I'm thinking probably people from sort of school age up to sort of youth, maybe a bit older. Maybe just we'll work with some drama groups to actually put this play on, so we can begin to get it out there.
Yeah,
I would love to be involved in actually seeing it performed here in England. I've seen it performed in South Africa under a tree in a park, which was great. So it can be performed anywhere at all. It's got quite a small cast, between 2 and 6, depending on how it's done. I would just love to see it out there, and people begin to see it and begin to talk about it, to talk about the book, to talk about the issues that are raised. So that's what I'd like to do.
And you talked as well about it. About maybe kind of producing learning resources for this to be used in schools. I mean, is this a project, do you think, that will be very easy to sell to, to kind of, you know, people of sort of primary school age? Because it seems that it's very much motivated at sort of challenging people's attitudes towards disability from a very early point in their formative years.
Yes, it would. I think the book at the moment, as it stands at the moment, is aimed at sort of Key Stage 2.
Okay.
Because it's, and I think that is the time when young people are beginning to form their opinions, their ideas. They're beginning to become independent human beings. And that would be great to actually be able to get it into schools at that sort of age. Get it performed, get it talked about, get the issues talked about.
Yeah.
And I'm up for doing that.
Sounds fantastic. I'm afraid we're starting to run out of time, but I think it would be really good to end if anyone is kind of been listening to this interview and think either of the projects we've been talking about are really fascinating. If you are involved in a local school or a local drama club and you think, yes, this is just the sort of thing we'd be looking at, how is it best that they contact you, either to talk about the workshops or to get a look at the script?
Probably the best thing to do is to send me an email. And that's at CEARTS, so CEARTS, at tiscali.co.uk.
Okay. If you missed that, we will be putting that on our Facebook page, which is Daniel Mumby on Phonic FM, and the Twitter feed, which is Mumby at Movies. That's Mumby AT Movies. We're also hoping to have an edited copy of this interview up, certainly on the Facebook page, but also we will try and get it on the Phonic FM website in the not-too-distant future. Clive, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you very much for coming into the studio and giving us your free time.
Thanks very much for having me. It's been great. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.